Hey everyone, my name is Hannah Bond. I'm with National Sports Media Association, and today I'm here with Steve Greenberg, the 2022 Illinois State Award winner for Sportswriter of the Year. Steve, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Hannah?
Good. Thank you so much for joining me today and taking your time out. It's an honor to be talking with you and getting to talk to you about your career.
Well, the honor is all mine. Glad to do it.
Thank you. Well, I will get started. First, I'll ask you what got you interested in the sports media journalism field?
Uh, High school, I don't know if every high school had a journalism class in the 80s, but mine did. And I didn't know about it until it was time to sign up for it if I was going to take it. And I just really enjoyed I would say, the collaborative nature of that class. I wasn't great at maybe paying attention always in other classes or behaving in other classes always, but in that class I found I really enjoyed the other kids and what people thought, and certainly what they wrote, and
Mhm.
and was respectful of the whole process. And I loved it, and I wound up writing a sports column for the school paper in high school,
Oh, wow.
and that was kind of created for me by my teacher. And so I remember him very fondly, because I think that, that sort of a stamp of recognition and approval from him really did a lot for my confidence. And so
Mhm.
going into college at Wisconsin, I started out right away as a student journalist and became a sports editor, and kind of went from there. I figured out, therefore, what I wanted to do, which was the one thing that I think is important for all young people, is to find a path that they want to be on.
That's awesome. And it's so great that you found that path so young in high school. And so in college, you wrote for your school. And after that, what did you have a job right out of college? What was your first sports journalism job?
It's funny you should ask. I'll try to tell this without being too lengthy. But my senior year or the summer before senior year of college, I interned at a newspaper in the Bay Area. I bought a used car. I drove
Mhm.
all the way out there in the days before GPS, and had the adventure of my life to that point. A great summer, and I did well. And the sports editor of this paper said, "Go back to school and finish up, and the first job I have is yours." So I went back for senior year, knowing I had a job waiting for me at the Peninsula Times Tribune in Palo Alto, California. And guess what paper folded second semester of my senior year?
Oh,
That
wow.
paper. And I only found out from a publication called Editor and Publisher that every young journalist at the time subscribed to. There's no internet, I didn't get a phone call. I just happened to
Mhm.
find out, and it was kind of a crushing blow. And so I, way behind the game, started applying to a million places, but I got nothing. And so I wound up staying in Madison, Wisconsin, and along with fellow former editors of our student paper, we started a University of Wisconsin Sports Weekly publication. And so we went into business, small business. I drove a taxi at night, and we lasted like 2.5 years. And then by the end of that, I returned to Chicago, where I was from and where I live again now after a long time during my career of being away. And I managed to get started at a real small newspaper here, and from there to a national magazine called Inside Sports that used to be great and has long since
Mhm.
shut down also. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I love to hear the progression from the high school who found journalism and starting your own small paper. I love it. So you talk about your first job and how you progressed through there, and then you ended up back up in Chicago. Can you take me along your path from when you got to that first job and then Chicago, and take me
Sure.
along the path to where you are now?
Sure. Well, the very first job I had after Madison was at a suburban newspaper chain here in Chicago, and I got the job of reporter, and I was covering news. Um, uh, the editor and I talked a few times along the way, and I think he liked my writing and maybe instincts. And so not long into that, he replaced the sports editor with me. So I became the sports editor of this chain, but I didn't stay there long at all. I went from there to Inside Sports Magazine, which at the time there were two national monthly sports magazines, Inside Sports and Sport, that competed fiercely and with each other. And it was big, upward of 1 million subscribers and all that. And I was an associate editor there, and the same company owned a lot of other periodicals, other sports monthlies. And so everyone in my position oversaw a smaller publication in addition to contributing to the big one. And I loved that job. That was in the mid 90s, and I'm still great friends with the people I, worked in the cubes with. It was so fun and such a great learning experience. I was kind of the youngest there, but only by a little. So I had really good friends who I could also kind of learn from, and who were good to me. So that was a great job. From there, I did you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
From there, and that shut down also. I have a long, not so illustrious history of losing jobs to big things beyond my control that hopefully I didn't contribute too much to. And from there to there's a publication called Pro Football Weekly that's been around forever, although I don't think it exists in print anymore. It started a basketball version and hired me as the managing editor to launch that thing. And I did that for a while. That lasted a couple of years before it ceased to exist. I was lucky to go from there, though, through the recommendation of a man who had been the sports columnist at the place I'd interned at. By this point, 10 years later or whatever it was, he was the managing editor of the fledgling ESPN.com. So he had gotten a really good job on the ground floor of what became, that real monster. And anyway, he recommended me to the editor of the Sporting News, which was the oldest sports publication in the country. Started in 1886. I went there in 2000 as to run its college coverage, college football, college basketball. And in different roles there, I was there until 2013, at which point I came back to my hometown, to Chicago, and worked at the Sun-Times.
And you've been there ever since.
I've been here ever since. But I was at the Sporting News when the magazine ended in 2012. And that was the biggest disappointment of my career. I mean, that hurt, That was a great magazine to work on. I was very proud of it. I loved it. I loved the people I worked with. A lot of people in 2013 who had become online employees because the magazine ended, but maybe, we had too many of those and had been around a little too long and made a little more money. And I was part of a big layoff, which is the only time I've been laid off. And it hurt and it was hard, but coming back to Chicago, which is where I'm from, not just me, but also my wife, was, a stroke of great fortune and timing. I don't love this job more than I love that one, but I love it equally. And it's different, and sometimes different's good. It just adds to the richness of a person's experience. So I'm glad to have had both jobs. Let's put it that way. It's great. And to have come back.
Yeah, I bet it's rewarding working in the town or the city that you grew up in.
Sure.
Thank you so much for taking me through that. And you've had so much experience in all these different jobs. What would be your best advice to a college student who's wanting to get into the sports media journalism industry?
Well, that's an important question. I talk to a lot of young people. It's something that I feel like I ought to do, and I do it really gladly and eagerly. But what I've been saying lately has kind of, I think, evolved based on the experiences I've seen other people have, including young people already in the business who, maybe had a need to change imposed on them because they lost a job or whatever. But also because, as I mentioned to you before you started recording, I have 3 kids in college. So this is
Mhm.
what I think applies to them too. And if I may, to you and, your
Yeah.
friends, is I think a person is best served by making a choice about what's most important to them. I think it would be very difficult and stressful to, let's say, job hunt, casting an unlimitedly wide net. It could be overwhelming because
Mhm.
there's every which direction you could go in the country and beyond. And then there's, a million different types of jobs. So I think a person's best served going in, and this is not just in sports journalism or in journalism or more broadly, but I guess anything, is what's most important to you. Is it where you are? Not, in other words, like where in the country you are?
Mhm.
Is it who you're with, who you're near? Or is it what you're doing? Or is it what's the combination thereof and the lifestyle? And so I think it's helpful to be open-minded, of course, and not just have one. Like, I'm in Chicago, so of course there's a way people here from a city this big idealize the city and their place in it, and they say, well, I
Mhm.
definitely want to stay in Chicago. It used to be impossible to start your career in a market this size, but
Mhm.
it's still hard and not necessarily the best thing. You can go when you go and you're on your own and you take a big bite of something that's not easy, that's challenging and all that, but you can grow so much from it. So I think there's a great sort of value and virtue in going, sort of chasing after experience, um but it's not the right thing for everybody. Some people, it's better to, they want to be in one place and that's going to make them happiest. And that's kind of the key to it all, is to,
Mhm.
try to be happy, or whatever. So, I kind of turn it on people when I talk to them and ask them, what's that thing for you is,
Yeah,
and when they figure out what that thing is, I think it just helps you start the process in a better way. So, and gives
definitely.
you, I guess, a better chance at a good outcome.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that advice. I'm definitely going to take that with me and those words with me. I have one more question with regards to, you've obviously been really successful in your field. You have all this experience. You're very successful. Um, what do you think helps and equates to that success? What advice would you give to students who are wanting to be successful in the field?
Well, thank you for putting it that way. I think that it's really important. And I see this so much here being Chicago, but I
Mhm.
see it so much in sports media in general, and always have, is this sort of performative nature that, people, they try to act like they know things they don't know, like they've done things they haven't done. They try
Mhm.
to mimic the sound they think they're supposed to write something with, or the way you're supposed to refer to something, the way, they've seen it. I think it's so important for people to deal in their own actual voice, to not pretend to know more about a subject than they do. I worked with a young woman who I'm very fond of, who was an intern at the time, and I think still an intern, not yet full time, at the Sun Times. And the Cubs were in the playoffs. It was 2017, and she received advice from my favorite friend in this business, the person I think is the best beat writer, best baseball beat writer in Chicago, and someone I deeply admire, but I disagreed with him hard on this one. She didn't know a lot about baseball,
Mhm.
and so writing about baseball was going to be hard and awkward for her. And he brought a bunch of resource materials, books, encyclopedias, and said, read them, take them home,
Mhm.
read them, study them. My advice to her after that was, go find an alley and a dumpster and throw them in, or throw them in a pile and set fire to them. Don't even open them. Start by writing what you do understand, what you can put across naturally as you, and grow it from there by talking and listening and reading. But you can't. I couldn't go write about something far above my head outside and do it well, and I wouldn't even want to try. I would rather just do it honestly and give myself a chance to write something worth saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I encourage people to not be in a hurry, to come across as more experienced or grown up or whatever worldly than they are. Be yourself and just listen, ask questions, think, and be more broad than sports. Have interests that are outside of that and beyond that. And I think that's even more important than being a sports nut. Have perspective and all that. So, be
Thank you
a
so much.
listener and a learner and all.
Yeah.
And all. You know what I mean? I think that's really important throughout a career.
Yeah, I just definitely from a college perspective, that's really important. I know listening, learning, and that's great advice. I know I'll take that with me. Thank you so much for your time, Steve. I really appreciate all your wise words and hearing all about your story. And congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. And good luck to you. I think it's great that you're interning, and I hope you're enjoying it and figure out where you want to go next. And good luck with all of it.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay. Thanks, Hannah. Take care. Bye.